Good evening. I would like to join you in welcoming Professor Wasserman. Good evening, Dr. Gabriel Wasserman. Professor Wasserman is a scholar of Jewish liturgy, which is in Piyyut and chazzanut, right? With a PhD from Yeshiva University and a postdoc from Hebrew University.
Yep.
He curates the weekly living Piyyut for hundreds of readers.
And hopefully it'll be hundreds plus however many is here. I don't know if any of you are on it yet, but you will be.
And whoever is going to join on YouTube.
Yeah.
Please join us. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gabriel Wasserman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shalom Aleichem. Thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the invitation. First of all, I want to thank my friend, Professor Hanan Gafni from Yerushalayim that introduced me to Professor Wasserman. So I want to thank you for Hanan for enabling this lecture that we're going to hear. I just want to remind, we came here and we want to get as most as we could get from the professor. So I am going to open the floor every few minutes for questions, but when it's not open for questions, please, if you have any questions, write it down on a note. And if it's very, very important, then okay, but I would like the professor to be able to say something, because I'm sure on every word that he's going to start to say, people have what to comment, but we want to be able to get the most that we can get from it. We have some 2 lectures, so so I'm asking, please, I don't have patience to have to be busy to fight around. Okay, please make sure that you accept the rules, and now, Professor, you can start.
Thank you. So Rabbi Yonason said, I want you to speak about Piyyut Chanukah. I said, I'll do that the second week. The first week, I'll speak about Piyuttim and Chanukah. And then, when you know what are Piyuttim and what's Chanukah, by Chanukah, then we can speak about Piyyut Chanukah. So what's Piyuttim? So we start with this concept they call Nosach HaKeva. What's Nosach HaKeva? What's the fixed Nosach? So you think it's obvious, that's what's in the Siddur. Where does it come from? So time of the Mikdash, we don't really know what prayer is. People certainly prayed. The focus is the Korban HaTamid. There is a statement of Rabbi Yeshua in the 4th chapter, in the 5th chapter of Sukkah, where he says, during Simchas Beis HaShoeva, we didn't sleep all day and all day and then all night. And he says we went from Tamid Shel Shachar to Tfilas HaShachar, and then we went to the Beis Medrash, and then we went from Korban HaMusafin to Tfilas HaMusafin. Why are they saying Tfilas HaMusafin at the time of the Mikdash? What's going on here? It certainly can't have looked anything like our Musaf, which is all about that we don't have the Korban Musaf. Could it have been another tefillah that says that please accept the Korban Musaf? Could it be an anachronism? Could Rabbi Yeshua be saying this 30 years later, at the time when there is Korban Musaf, and he's misremembering? All is possible. We don't know what tefillah looks like then. Immediately after the Korban. So, someone once suggested to me, my friend Yoshua Yankelovich suggested, some of you might have heard of him. So he said, what do you, what's that?
From the Sefer Torah.
Yeah, and other things, yeah. He said, what do you think Leila Seder was like the first year after the Chorban? So I said, I never thought about that question. What do you think? He said, they probably just sat and cried. There's going to be a period in between when you no longer have what you had, you don't know what's going to be further. So it's in Dor Yavne, the time of Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel says, B'chol yom mispalel adam shmoneh esrei, 18 brachos. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, me'ein shmoneh esrei. The Gemara, they talk about, does this mean me'ein kol bracha bracha? Does this mean something like our Havinenu, which Shmuel has as Havinenu? Or does it mean you say 18 brachos and you shorten each? Except that if it's that, then maybe that would be Shmoneh Esrei. How is that any different? This is the machlokes between Yosef Heinemann and Ezra Fleischer. Ezra Fleischer says, Rabbi Gamliel instituted. This is the text. He made a siddur that everybody is going to daven out of. What do you mean a siddur? Okay, so it wasn't a written siddur. He made a text that you can have an oral text to, that they all say. Also seems that in early times there were a lot of psukim in tefillah. We'll see this a lot in Piyuttim. We see this, we still have this in Kedusha. We have it on Malchias Zechron Shofros. How could this be? How could he have instituted these long brachos, exact text, psukim? What's going on here? Yosef Heinemann says impossible. When it says he instituted Shemoneh Esrei, he means there are 18 brachos. Maybe the Chasila, he said, has to be just like this, although even there we see variations. The theme of the bracha, and you say what you say. So, my friend Avi Schmidman quotes in the name of another colleague, I think it's Uri Erlich, but I don't want to say that for certain because I did not hear it from him. He says the only way Ezra Fleischer could have thought this, the reason he thought this, he grew up in fascist Romania, and then in communist Romania, and in 20th century you have regimes where they say, we're making all the laws different today. Now we're going to put on the radio, there's going to be the new national anthem, everybody has to sing it tomorrow, everybody's going to march to it, you're all going to know it, we'll publish it in the newspaper, and then there's a new regime and they change it, and so he thought that must be how it was. There were no newspapers, there were no radios, there weren't even Sidurim. I mean, Hagabatzmach, what do you think? He taught the text to his students, said memorize this, and then said teach everybody else this text. Doesn't seem likely. Again, the Gemara on that Mishnah. Actually, first let's get to the end of there. Reb Leizer Omer Hosat Tfilasei Keva. Ain't Tfilasei Tachanunim. What are you talking about? Shemoneh Esrei, ain't Shemoneh Esrei. Whether you can do this when you need to pray. You need to pray. Not just davnin, but mispalel zayin. And he says, if you make a keva, you're losing that. Then we see, Gemara tells this story from a brisa. Shimon Pakoli Hister Shemoneh Esrei brachos lifnei Rabban Gamliel al haseder b'Yavne. Al haseder. Why? So many of these brachos probably existed at the time of the Mikdash. Not in the form we have them now. By the Yerushalayim, okay, build it up so it'll be bigger. Great, but so there's going to be changes. But and maybe that one didn't exist. He puts them ala seder. Rabbi Gamliel says to the Chachamim, does anyone know how to make a bracha against the minim? Shmuel Katan gets up and says it. I think the way most people imagine, when you learn this, when you're a kid, you think that Shemoneh Esrei brachos existed for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and then one day they had a problem with the minim, they needed to make an extra bracha, and that's why they call it Shemoneh Esrei. It was always 18, now we have 19. Seems from here, it could have been a week later, it could have been an hour later, it could have been right there. He says, okay, like Shimon Bakuli gets up, makes these Shemoneh Esrei brachos. Rabbi Gamliel says, there's one mincha, and afterwards Rabbi Gamliel says, maybe we're missing something. Shmuel Katan gets up, makes Berkas Aminim.
But why is it?
Why is it called Shemoneh Esrei?
Yeah, why is it called Shemoneh Esrei?
Because this tzemach is not an original bracha. In Bavel, they had separate. You had separate brachos, Bonei Yerushalayim, and Matzmiach Kar Yeshua.
Who's Shimon Apakali?
Who was he? Somebody who lived at the time of Rabbi Gamliel. Also, not relevant. Yeah.
So it's 17?
Let me answer the question. Start to answer my questions.
Yeah.
So in Bavel,
So in Bavel, we separate them. I said Bavel. We're Bavli Jews, except for some things we've gotten from our strong like
Piyyut, it's still together. In Piyyut.
Yes, correct.
So before Shimon Apakali,
for 4 was 17?
Yes, but that might have been for one tefillah. That might have been not even one tefillah.
So what
He
does
says
it mean?
he instituted 18, and then when he's there,
The Gemara just is assuming that
Explain.
it was already 18. Because the Gemara does say that
when you read the psukim, you say, the shemus in Tilim
the Gemara
Kaftes.
does say that the 18 is against this 18. This is the 19.
18 and 19 is Kelakov here. You're saying in the
No, I'm saying 19 is the Balamashim, is the 19th bracha. I'm saying
Right.
the Gemara does say that.
It says there are 8 because you're saying there's the 18 shemos in Tilim Kaftes,
Right.
and then it says, but what about Berkas Hamidim? It says Kelakov here. It is assuming that.
Yeah.
If you read the story straight, and if you know how they daven in Eretz Yisrael. It's fair to say that. You'd have to say that in Eretz Yisrael afterwards they combined them. And some do say that. Some do say, no, there must have been 18, and V'la Malshinim was added, V'la Minim, V'la Malshinim was added, and in Eretz Yisrael they said, wait a minute, you can't have 19. You have to have 18, and then they combined them. You could say that. It's not really relevant to these questions of Piyyut, but all this shows you how everything was in flux at the beginning. It was not, as in later times, you say, how can you insert, how can you do this, hefsek. Hefsek into what? You need to say something. Again, that's in the early period. And we see the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, we don't have to read it innovating, but we see the fact that the Mishnah is talking about how many psukim you need for Malchus, how many for Zichronos, how many for Shofros, and what you're allowed to use, what you're not allowed to use. You don't use Zichronos, Ein Mazkir Zichron Malchus v'Shofros Por Anos. There's a fixed sitter. You don't need to be told that. Now, what's Piyyut and why Piyyut? So let's go a little out of order. Let's look at this Piyyut on the bottom of page 1. Afterwards, we'll look at this Gemara. This is what they call a Ma'arechet Yotzer, a Yotzer sequence. Not very many people write about Piyyut on an academic level in English, so I call it Yotzer sequence. I don't know what the other 3.5 people who write about it in English call it, but I call it sequence. You look here. This is a very, very short way to say Berchos Kriyas Shema. It's very simple. It's in what's called Meruba'im meter, which is, you've got 4 feet, as they call them, and they each divided into two stressed words in each, meaning sometimes you combine, you see, Ba'avoscha Hashem Elokeinu, so that, fine, treat that as one word. So you have 2 and 2, and then 2 and 2. What
do you mean 2 and 2?
2 and 2, 2 words and 2 words, and then you have the 2 slashes in the middle, like a snachta, and then 2 words and 2 words, and then you're done.
2 words.
2 words. Again, as I said, it's not always a word. So al machatz, you see that's a word.
Make it as a one.
Yeah, this is 3 words. Mikol Tzura V'Yud.
That's why there's a makaf there.
And make it as a one.
Mikol tzara. It's the
No.
yeah. Later they get fancier and they say, let's actually count words themselves, which actually makes it harder to feel because you don't say a word. You'd have to say Mikol tzara v'yagai. That's not how we talk. It's fancier because it's thinking of each word as a concept, but this is more natural. Very early Piyyut. Notice there's no rhyme. There's no acrostic. Alphabetical acrostic, we find already in Tanakh. Fine. Alphabet, not names. You don't find any signing of names, but you find aleph base. Rhyme you don't find in Tanakh. Rhyme you don't find in Greek and Latin ancient poetry. You first start to see rhyme.
How do you identify poetry without rhyming? How do you? So what is the what tells
So
you?
here it's what we're calling meter. It's not meter in the sense of the Paitanei Sfarad where they've got the bum ba ba bum ba bum ba ba. But it's you feel the 2 words. Kel Hashem v'ya'ir lanu va'ortzid kecha l'tzion tatzmiach.
Would this be an insert into your chazzanut, or would it be instead?
It would be instead. So it's very, very short. And note what it's missing. What do we say in that? I mean, we say a lot. It's very long, but what do we say every single day? Kedusha. Good. So, already even much later, already in Shulchan Aruch, it talks about 2 Yesh Omrims. One is that you say Kedusha alone. One is that you only say B'tzibur. But let's assume this was B'tzibur. Who's saying Piyuttim alone? Then remember, it's not like they give out the siddur and you follow the siddur at home. Presumably, this is for a chazan. What's going on?
But so when you explained that the reason from the chazan was to replace the nisach, yeah.
Yeah.
So once this turns into a nisach,
so it never did.
It never did. So what?
No, this is what it's amazing.
Written down.
So he can use it again if he wanted to.
Yeah. Never turned to nisach.
Something. This is not. This is. I don't think we. I think we have one copy of this.
What was the purpose of this? Usually Piyyut.
To make it more tefillah. To make it more tefillah.
How we said. Blazer Omer. How is it tefillah zekeva? Ain't tefillah zekachnunim.
So, and this makes it.
Every chazan had unique taste.
How old is this?
His own version.
So this, as I said, is not rhymed. It seems to be very old because
100 years?
what's that? Yeah, more. So rhyme first appears. What's the first like? So as I said, you don't find rhyme in Tanakh. You don't find rhyme in ancient Greek and Latin poetry. What's the first language where you find rhyme?
Arabic.
Before, so you do find rhyme in Arabic quite early, 6th century. So,
But it was orally way before that.
I mean, how do you know that? Were you there?
They claim that. The Arabs.
They claim that today. You're saying it's the. I mean, maybe. The first time we see it written down, the two languages we see it. One is in Lashon Kodesh. The other is Syriac. Syriac is Aramaic. It's a dialect of Christian Aramaic. Which was first? We don't know. It's right around the same time. And we use...
What time?
Early 6th century, around the turn of the 6th.
5th century.
Exactly. And we use that to... Any Piyyut that's before rhyme, we call pre-classical Piyyut. That is the criterion we use to determine. This is not, and it's also very simple. Also, the pre-classical Piyyut almost always is written in this merubaim, this bam 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 bam, and that's a thought. This nachna bam 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 bam. So what do we still say from this? So the atukananta
You
is like
started to explain why kedusha we don't have.
I did.
You started
Yeah.
to explain. You said
So-
maybe even if it was b'tzibur.
So in Masechah Sofrim.
Is it matter?
No, in Masechah Sofrim it says. It says Vayar Lanu. That's light. That's the day. That's the morning. Yeah. that you can't tell. That could be. When you're Vayar Lanu. That's the Ma'otzit Gachalatzir. That's me. What?
Beside the brucha doesn't start with a brucha.
Yeah, so it would have started with bracha. It would have started Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam.
Oh yeah.
He probably would have continued Yatzar. With this one, it looked he could have continued Kel Hashem Vayar Lanu. This actually, some of them don't make sense, and he definitely would have begun Yatzar because they it's
Could it be that it's not there? Like, are we assuming it literally said these words, or it's like bullet points? Like, I want to talk about these concepts and barely speak around.
Well, it's in poetry, so I'm saying it has this meter. It has this meter, so he's saying these words. So this is Masechah Sofrim. When do you have kedusha? It says you have kedusha on Shabbos and on Yontif, right? Only Shachris. In Shabbos and on Yontif and Chol HaMoed. And Yeshom, it's in Sanhedrin, right? Yes. He says, and on Chol HaMoed, and Rosh Chodesh. And some say also on Chanukah, because it has Hallel. Because when do we ever, everything we make bigger on Purim than Chanukah. There's only one thing that's bigger Chanukah than Purim. It's got Hallel. Well, it's longer. No, it's longer, but I'm saying an individual is Hallel. So Hallel, they say, is Gerim Kedusha. So that, is that talking about Shemoneh Esrei? Is that talking about Yotzer? So, with the discovery of the Geniza, and you find, over and over, you find only Piyuttim for, only Marachot Yotzer for Shabbos and Yontif have Kedusha in them. Clearly it meant also Yotzer. But there's actually a difference. And again, this we wouldn't know just reading the words of Masechah Sofrim, which is, again, what the Baalei Tosfos had, and that's what they have there. You wouldn't know that there's actually a difference within that. What's the difference? On Chol HaMoed, and on Rosh Chodesh, and on Chanukah, any weekday that you have Kedusha, it's only in Shemoneh Esrei. So you look, Rabbi Kalir, we say, it's really Kilir or Kalir or something. He spells his name with the Yud very clearly. Professor Shlomit Elitzor is always very makpid to say yeah, Kilir. She says, I've heard her correct people that's so.
Laser,
not laser. There's never a yud there. There's never a yud there. The second name there's a yud. The first name there's not yud.
Okay.
And he often there's no. They give a few svaras there, but and often there's no aleph. Often there's just Lazar, not El Lazar. Yeah. It's clearly how he pronounced it. What's it?
A Rishalmi name.
Yeah, it was nice. That's right. He clearly, I think he buffled too. He clearly pronounced his name Lazar, and sometimes he spelled it with an aleph when he wanted to do it extra, more. You get more stanzas that way, right? Okay, what? It's not even a pen name. That's how he pronounced his name. So he has a Marechet Yotzei for Hashan Rabbah, and for the first what? Yeah, we got published last year.
It means something special.
Of course it means something. Of course it deserves it. And you look, it's a special day. There's no Kedusha. No Kedusha in Yotzer. In his Chazar Sashatz, in his Kroiva for Hashanah Rabbah, there's a Kedusha. So we see there's a difference even within the days that get Kedusha. So it's very simple. There's no station here. There's no Tachana. They have where you have
Kedusha.
Right. So it just goes straight. Maybe you'd begin your Tzarech. You say this and then immediately you end the bracha. I want to show you that even in prose, on the next page, in Siddur Asag, what does the bracha Yitzhar look like? It's very short. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Elam Yotzer Avodah Choshech Oiseh Shalom V'Eres HaKol Me'ir La'aretz V'Lad Dorin Alev Rachmim B'Rabim V'Tuvei Machadesh B'Choyim Tomid Masei V'Reishis Baruch Atah Hashem Yotzer V'Eres.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing. And then he says, and if you have a tzibur, he gives this whole thing, and he says, you can say this Piyyut Kel Baruch Gadol Deya. Anyone recognize that one? Or you could, no, we say this during the week.
Yeah, we know it.
Or you can say Kel Antir B'Marom B'Lam B'Malam Moshavah. Anyone recognize that one? He says this one's good too. Wakaum Yaqulun Mikan Makan Kel Baruch Gadol Deya. They say this. Wahu Jaiz Mithlal Awal. And this is much like the first one. It's fine. It's all fine. It's all fine. So, the next one again, it's very short. Now you see this is very early because the next one is also short. By the time you're dealing with Reb Lazar Reb Kilir, his Piyyut before Micha Moicha is always long. And this is pretty standard there. The only one when you're doing a weekday Ma'arechet Yotzei that's long is before Micha Moicha. So Ezra Fleischer says maybe that's because Al Pi Halacha you need to include Makas B'Chayres, Yetzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf. They're themes you need to include, and when it's just this one stanza Meruba'im, it can be hard to do that. Did they succeed in doing that? Yes, they did. This anonymous early Python absolutely did. You're absolutely right with this. Al Machatz B'Chayres Val Kriyas Peleg. Peleg means the sea. Why does Peleg mean the sea? So
Which page?
the first page, page one.
Oh.
You see, it's very, very short.
Oh, here.
Kriyas Peleg, Yetzias Noif, Sherucha Amusim. So Nof is Mitzrayim. We said you see that in Nevi'im. It's the city of Memphis in Mitzrayim, by what they call Synecdoche, the part standing for the whole standing for the part standing for the whole represents all of Mitzrayim. What's Peleg? So in Tanakh, you have a few places it means a river, a stream. Yes, a river, a stream. Right.
Kris Yamsuf.
What's that?
Kris Yamsuf.
Yes, but the Yam, why does Peleg mean Yam? A river is a sea.
We're talking about the split.
No,
Peleg means a split.
Not here. No, Kriya means Peleg. The word Peleg means split, but not here. Here the word Kriya means split. It's the splitting of the Yam. So, the Paitanim took advantage of a coincidence. Shulamit Delitzua as an article, they tried not to use foreign words in Piyyut.
Why don't you finish first the next two?
Okay, I'll translate it.
Yeah.
Regarding Makas B'Chayres and Kriyas Yamsuf and Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Amusim, the Jews, Amusim Minivete, they sang to you. It covers all that you need to say in that over there. Again, you have to be very good to do it that way, which is why mostly they expanded it. Yeah. But I'm looking here, when I look, I'm using this also to show how already you see the beginning, you see the sprouts of what would be in Piyyut, using epithets. You don't say Yam. Yam's a normal word. You say Peleg. Peleg doesn't mean sea. So, in Greek, Pelagos means sea. It's not related. But, so we don't use foreign words in Piyyut in this period. But this is a hechsher through the back door. Because Peleg means something similar. It's like the word gay. Gay means valley in Hebrew.
Gimel
Okay, it's
Aleph, Gimel Yud.
Gimel Yud Aleph.
Guy.
Yeah. In Greek, it means land, like geography. Geography. Okay. Yeah, gay. Yeah. So they use it to mean land in Piyyut. We don't use foreign words. This isn't a foreign word. It's a native word that we're expanding in meaning, and it lets you do this clever, not using. Why would you say it gleich if you can say it krum? That's the right. That's
That's Piyyut.
exactly. That's Piyyut.
Why don't they want to talk? Because poetry, like
Because that is the beauty of their poetry. It's not like you look in the Meshuri Sfarad, and they're doing these metaphors and whatnot. That's their poetry. There's not much metaphor in. Occasionally you see a metaphor even in not poetry text. But their poetry is using beautiful words that are not the normal words. If you do the normal words, we can go back and say this.
like it's more recognizable. You can, what's the reason?
It's more
to use,
sophisticated.
There's more you can do. If you want to, listen, you're Yotze if you could just say this, right?
Right.
If you say this every day, you get bored.
He's not rhyming and he's not. He doesn't
Right, so he's doing other things. He's doing this. This is what he's doing. This is epithets. You don't say Avraham, you'll say Eson. You won't say,
Why?
or you'll say
Why?
Ezra.
Just the-
That's the poetry. That's the. You can always change.
I know the answer to that point, but why? I'm not saying what's.
Why rhyme? Why should you rhyme? Why anything?
That's what you rhyme. If you rhyme, I can understand that. That's so What's the beauty in not using the
The cleverness. You're saying, yeah.
You have a chap in there. You have a
Yes, and you say, oh wow. Yeah. It prevents it from being this keva. It prevents it from being boring. It's constantly renewal. It's machadesh. The word you can say the same thing 100 different ways, more than 100 different ways.
Okay, now you said the answer. It prevents being keva. It makes it.
It makes it that, and that's other point. Rhyme would also prevent it from being keva, but rhyme hadn't been invented yet. Later, when they had rhyme, they had that too. Yeah. So notice though, in the third bracha, how many brachos are there in the morning? So it's often a Mishnah. No. It's often a Mishnah. How many? Shachar Mevarich, Shtayim Lechanan. How many Lachara? 2 and 1 is 3. Okay. So good. That much we know. Yeah.
You start with one.
What's that? Yeah. So, but how many tachanot are there here? How many slots? 5. Because the last bracha is 2 psukim. Who said them? Probably the call. They're probably listening. They're being Yotze with him, but they say these psukim. And on Shabbos, they're extra psukim though. What are the extra ones? In the first bracha, there's Kadesh and Baruch, right? So you get, again, we can get ahead of ourselves. There's on page 5, there's the structure of the classic Marechet Yotzer for a Shabbos. You begin again, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, presumably begin Yotzer V'Vorei maybe Or Olam B'Yitzar Chayim, we don't know where this comes from, we don't know what it's doing there, maybe it was part of how they said, by the way, note, it's also this Meruba'im meter, Or Olam B'Yitzar Chayim, Or Reis Me'Eifel, Omar Vayehi. The 2 sentences, each with 2 halves, and each of the 2 halves, each has 2 words. So that first piyut. But unlike on a weekday, where it would go straight into the end of the bracha, and that would just be the bracha, that one line. Unlike then, it goes into kadosh. And the call would say that. Then you've got a piyut oifan to bridge between kadosh and baruch. Then you've got another piyut. Me'oira. Yotzer ha-me'oiros. And often you'll see, again,
The first one is not called Kedishta.
No.
It's called Yotze.
It's called Yotzer. It's called Yotzer. So scholars call the whole thing Marechet Yotzer, and the first one Guf Yotzer.
Guf Yotze.
Traditionally, they're both called Yotzer. It's confusing.
Guf Yotze means the replacement for Yotze Ma'oros.
Well, for Yotzer.
Right, Yotze.
Right. Which during the week they're the same thing. During the week they're all the same thing. So you'll see later, not so much in this very, very early period, but you'll have this device called Shirshur. anadiplosis in English, like Milashon Shasheres. We see it a little here. We see it a little here on page 1, in the last 2 Piyuttim. So 1, 2, 3, between 3 and 4 is going to be the pasuk Mechamaycha. What are the opening words of the 4th? Which is coming from where? And then what are the last opening words of the 5th? Where's that coming from? Exactly. You find some Piyuttim where the Ma'ira will begin with the word Makaimai, because that's the last word. Baruch Hu Hashem Makaimai. The Ahava, get back to the chart, will begin with the word Ha-Me'orais.
But what's Pshat?
It's connecting to it was the last word that he just said. He's connecting to the next
Even
one.
though we're finished.
Even though it's no bracha, even though he'll have to cleverly then work that.
Combine it.
Yes. Now this is proof that, because some might want to argue, how do you know they didn't say everything like we do? How do you know they didn't just have a siddur and then they inserted it in? So this is proof. There's no, it doesn't make any sense. And then right before the end, you're going to start Hama'irais in the wrong. It's clear that at least it's clear that they did. There's other proof too. This is often one of the hardest things for people to swallow. They say, wait, I see that in the manuscript it doesn't give the regular text, it just gives the Piyuttim. How do we know that the manuscripts, they abbreviate? They say v'chulei, they say this, that. This is the proof.
Is there anyone in academia that argues with that thinks that they did say the brachas?
I don't think so. Maybe 150 years ago, before they had Geniza, before they had everything. But today, no. That's what they're doing. Good. Let's look at some more developed ones, and 3. We don't have to look at these in depth. I didn't give the whole Piyuttim because our focus is going to be on Chanukah. Now I'm just introducing what Piyyut is. Incidentally, the reason we say Piyyut, that comes from Piyyut is the one who writes Piyyut. Somehow that word became that even people refer to the Piyyut as the Piyyut, but it's the Piyyut writes the Piyyut. So,
where in the world is, like, if we take a break from going further, where in the world is Piyyut this time this starts? Like, is it
Israel?
No, that's where they are focused. But where is it in the Arabic countries? Where is it in the Greek lands? Where is it in Rome?
I mean, who's writing poetry? Everybody is a poetry. I'm saying.
Did they use the same structures?
Meruba'im? Meruba'im I know only in Hebrew.
Did they use
alphabetic? Alphabetic somewhat. Not much. I'm saying it's somewhat.
At that time, this is 7th century.
It's much earlier. 7th is already Kalir. Kalir. Yeah.
Is Piyyut Hebrew?
It was Greek.
What emphasis was poetry?
It's the same as the word poet in English. Yeah.
What emphasis was there in poetry, like in the 6th century?
In non-Jewish?
Yeah, in the general population.
So it's interesting because you have from Samaritans, you have from Christians, both of Aramaic-speaking Christians and Syriac and a Greek-speaking Christian. You have retellings of biblical stories. You have, which we're going to get to. So far, this was the most simple. We didn't have, tellings of stories. This basically is the bracha in poetry. But you have that. You have narrative poems, long narrative. Well, I guess tellings of biblical stories is narrative. What's that?
If you struggle to define poetry, Ali Ba'id and Nila is not poetry.
As usual is poetry, probably also.
That's Ali Ba'id is
right.
More.
Yeah.
It's out there.
The later
sings better.
As no poet, Then
before we go any further, let me open the floor officially.
So this is wait question. Okay, good.
It's not like, what do you define poetry?
of elaborating certain ideas, the concept of the Yom Tov exactly. So if this early poet,
right now we're not even up to the Yom Tov. That's the next page. We're very basic.
Is these early poets? Is there any sort of theme over here besides just the fact of everybody giving their variation, or there's any sort of theme which elaborates or gives a particular point of the brucha more? Is there any other purpose?
In this one we see here? No.
In the early one, this one,
very early,
many of the early ones.
So I'll tell you, a lot of we don't have so much of the very early because once they developed rhyme and once they become longer, people want to say those. It's only by chance what survived from this very early period. There's not much we can say. I'm saying, you look at this one, do you see any theme? I just see, making the bracha beautiful.
Another version, nothing more than that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Good, but okay, yeah.
A second. Anyone
We'll
else?
see in the next one things for holidays, which do things with it. Yeah.
You would speak Quran.
They asked about the Ali Ba'er, Anilo, Azini, these types of things. Those are not considered poetry.
They're poetry, they're not Piyyut. Piyyut is the specific liturgical poetry in the brachas.
Like davening. You don't.
The poetry, which it's not just it's like davening, it's not just for davening, it is davening. That is the important.
In Tehillim, you have certain parts that are like more.
Of course, no. There's biblical poetry is the main thing in biblical poetry is parallelism. Parallelism, meaning you have so you'll have what is it? Yamsheni mimayim rabba. What's the beginning of the Toshieni me'oivi az Yamsheni mimayim? I think I just mixed. But the beginning and the end, they say either the same thing or opposite things, or they complement each other in one way or the other. And in some of this very earliest, You have that as well. Chiastic is when you have A and then B and then B and then A. We're saying even simpler than that. Just first half and second half. It could be A B B A. It could be A A B B. It could, but it's and you see that a little in this earliest. You're not going to see that in later period. In this earliest because it's a transitional period. They're still there. They're closer to Tanakh than they are to we. They are to us than we are. They're closer to Shlomo Melech than they are to us. I think so. I think, yeah. Just about, yeah.
Is it between?
Yeah.
Anyone here? Say something? Okay, you can go.
Okay. I think what poetry before that. I'm still in the Gemara. There's a little in Moed Katan when you have some of those hespedim. So they do similar things to here using epithets. You don't say Tiveria, you say Rakas. You say it's whatever. It's a machlokas in Megillah. Hamas or Rakas is which is Tiveria, which is Tzipari. But they're using these biblicizing names. They're using other names. They're and it's. Is it Merubaim? I think it is. I think it's this kind of structure. But it's very short, very simplistic. You don't have what we're about to see. This is also very early.
Page 3.
Yes. The ones on this. So there is rhyme in this first one. So 6th century, when you start, it's the beginning of rhyme, but not consistent. You look in the second one, the only rhyme is the word Sinai. It's not exactly rhyme. So 6th century, there's no signed name. They're not signing their names yet. And there's Hakpada that you see. These are longer. These are the first one's for Yom Kippur, the second one is for Shavuos. We still say these today. Some of us. They're in the Machzor. In Washington Heights we say. Yes. And the Yom Kippur one, more people said that that's actually, you see that more even today. So these are longer, and therefore, what's going to be the difference in Yom Kippur and a weekday, or even Yom Kippur and Shana Rabbah?
Condition.
Right. So instead of going straight into the bracha, it's going to go into Kadosh. And look how you have these refrains. Every other refrain, it ends with the word Maraim v'Kadosh. You're going to go into there. This one also has another refrain that doesn't. Later on, you're not going to see that. Later on, when you have refrains, they're all going to end in Kadosh. But again, this is very early. They're still working out the rules. The word or appears in every single stanza. I forgot to circle it or to swear it in the last one. But you say Chanchein v'orcha. Yeah, you have it. He's very makpid. He's not leaving the topic of the bracha. For these, I don't see how anyone can say this is hefsek. This literally is the topic of the bracha. When you get to more developed piyuttim, which we will see when we're saying Hanukkah and they're telling the story of Hanukkah, and you could say, how can you say that in the middle? And fine, you can have a svara. Here, he doesn't leave the theme. And in the second one, the Shavuos one also.
That because it's a special day, he's going to mention Tov the Brucha, the day,
all through. You never forget the day. This is also a beautiful thing Piyyut can do.
This is
So-
the first time that you find this?
I mean, we don't know exactly when these are from, but these are very early. These are, I'd say 6th century. There's already a little
Well, you
rhyme.
don't have an
so-
older example of that you use a holiday in a like you have Yom Kippur.
No, so you look in Chazal, they give you, so they're, on Rosh Hashanah, the 3 extra brachos, those are devoted entirely to the day, right? But the brachos before, it says, I'm avos, gevurais, kedushas Hashem. And then you have these 3 extra. Okay, there's a machlekes, so you're koil of kedush, malchias in kedushas Hashem, or in this. So there, okay, that is an example of you're mixing something into a bracha. It's one bracha. It's one, and the others are, you're getting there, you're making something special. Here though, so for the rest of the davening, in theory, you could have a davening in shul. You get there in the morning. Today we have chazzanut, we have nosach, everything's completely different on Rosh Hashanah. From the beginning, you know, even how the chazan is dressed. But you could have a Rosh Hashanah where you walk in, chazan is dressed as usual, everything is normal as usual. The middle bracha in Shachris doesn't have to be that different from Shlosh Regalim. Fine, you mention the name of the day, great. And then in Musaf, suddenly you have in the middle you have an hour when you have these 3 long brachos and you have shofar. That's zecher different from any other day of the year. And when that's done,
Go home.
well, no, you have 3 more brachos.
That's it. You come home 11:30.
Fine, but no, I'm saying you have 3 more brachos.
Wenn's von halb Stunde.
Yeah. Yeah, we finished at 11:56 the second day, but we started late.
Is Lach Legoy Kodesh the 3 Kedushas? That's what we say instead of Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh?
I don't think so. It's.
I don't think.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, is.
Is the mentioning of the
I think
bracha
this is
oil
instead, this
because
is
of
organized
poetic reasons or
Kiddush.
halachic reasons?
Why can't it be both? Why can't it be? Is the point? If he's a chazan, is he? What terms? Again, we don't know anything about the people in this time because they don't sign their names. But I'm saying, if you put your mindset in the mind of a chazan, your Ergetzvi and Eretz Yisrael in 500 before Islam, right? And they ask you to go up and daven, and you're thinking, I have to make a tefillah. I have rules. I've got rules from halacha. I've got rules from poetry. I'm trying to figure out, do we know what's in his head? He's trying to make something that fits everything. I'd say probably on a basic level halachic, but he's going to do with it everything he can to make it artistic. And it's beautiful when he does, because when you daven like this, do you forget that you're in the bracha of Yitzhar? You don't forget it for a moment. Do you forget that it's Yom Kippur? No. Also, you don't forget for a moment because he changed the keva to fit the day without ever diverging from the theme.
Is this is the yoitz, this is the oif, and this is the...
No. I wrote the chulei. This whole thing's chulei, and you're going to add kadosh.
A big yoitz.
Yes. Because on days when you kedusha, the answer is big.
Yeah, that's what Shushan, that was like sort of.
And it goes through all the alibis because you only did.
Yeah, I wrote the chulei. Yeah.
It goes till tov.
Oh yeah.
That's very
He goes back.
He's a poet composer.
When Al-Kili started, it was like a yoitz.
At the very end. When they get the tov. When they get the tov, it just says kadosh the last time. They know that they say kadosh. So it seems also that he probably had some kind of little bridge. He had some kind of little bridge at the end that he said, if he said that last time, Kadosh, V'ayrim, or Mishabchim, or something like that.
Instead of wondering, because you said the chazan brought his yotze, why didn't you say today if somebody would make a yotze, you wouldn't call him a chazan. You would say he's a poet, he wants to add to the yotzes. Why you could say the chazan makes the yotzes?
That means what? You think it was
maybe the shamas made the yotzes. What's the chazan? Chazan is a good voice and somebody that knows how to lead a crowd. Where's the chazan coming?
So later on, we definitely know, and we definitely have sign Pliny Chazan. But
Oh, it's not
When you-
chazan the way we call a chazan.
What do you mean?
Somebody leading the prayer.
Sure it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you think that Chazan didn't mean, you think
What's the
that
connection between knowing how to write poetry to be a chazan? Like, well, like what's
Shvi Tzibah was
when you look, when
Why is
you
he the one
look,
writing the poem?
what do you, so when you look in the Gemara in Yoma,
Today, if I
so
send my wedding invitations, I go to a writer to write up the niceness.
you're living in a world where we have printing and we have writing
Exactly.
and whatnot. So I'm saying, you're saying there you'd have to say, so he writes on one piece of paper and gives it. So later on we do find that a little,
There was.
but that
He's distributed
Someone
before.
writes
Rav
it.
Sadia Gaon wrote Piyuttim for a chazan named Shlomo,
Oh, so
and he signs them Shlomo. He doesn't sign them with his own name.
he's like a
He
hired
wants to
gun.
make it as if
Ghostwriter.
when you do it, someone else do it. You're embarrassed of it. You know what I'm saying? You don't say I'm saying somebody else's. It's by the way, chazzanut in the 1920s, 1930s, the greats all sang their own pieces. They all
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
let's say today giving a lecture, we have like someone printed out like Madame McCoymas beforehand.
yeah.
Like everybody has it. If you would read like Balpeh, we wouldn't like follow you, right?
Right.
So these Peytonim, they made their poets like Erev Yontiv. They gave it out. They said, "Oh, let's."
They did not give it out. No.
It's
You know how
a little bit-
expensive that would be? They had
It's a little
different.
bit weird to assume that they people followed all these sophisticated poets.
They're listening. They're listening. It's like going to Broadway show. It's going to Broadway show. You go and you see and you hear the yeah.
Oh.
So and also though, the whole attitude towards how you learn things was that people are much more used to listening and sitting in the. Now, if we talk without Mara'i Makamas, everybody takes out their phone. They didn't have phones. Was that? I mean, it's a different. What's that? Does that mean that they caught every remez? No, but you're also not going to catch every remez if I do give you the Mara'i Makamas. So. Talk about this further, but you find, so where is it in Yoma where it says it's how the Naches Kame de, and it's different Amorayim. He did Avatur Meir, Avatur Yossi. He himself, he's doing, in the Avodah where he says Chatasi Avisi Chatasi. He's choosing what to say and he's saying it. Does that mean that nobody ever took one from someone else if there was a popular one? You could, but
It's like every week the guy showed up with his own derasha.
yes. Now, does it ever happen that somebody comes?
No,
Does it ever happen that a Rav will come up?
It didn't happen every week. It didn't happen every week. The Chazan had his Nesach. We don't. He had
We don't know. We don't. It could have
Yeah,
been.
but it
We
doesn't
don't.
stop. We don't have like it's not Mustab, but every week
You
he
say
came
that-
with a new.
He said this kind of stuff. He probably, but for shop, let's say for. That comes later, when people wanted so much that you have for every parsha. But again, that's later, right? At this,
It's like a Rav can give a drusha every week.
right, and occasionally a Rav might steal a drasha from someone else, but it's not. Nobody respects that. No, if the Rav gets up and he says a drasha that he heard from someone, and they recognize it, and they know it's not him. Are they going to respect that? It happens.
It's a
Yes, there's plagiarism. But it's not plagiarism if he says I took it from him. But then people say, why should I come to you? I'll go to him. Oh. Okay. I don't know if we don't need to talk about this Kroivis Kedushtais in 7 and 8 because these are not going to come up in our study of Hanukkah. If you invite me back, when you invite me back for Arba Parshiyas, for Pesach, for Shavuos, for Rosh Hashanah, then we can talk about that. But I do want to, before we end the first half, how we do on time, we're just about halfway, yeah? Which is very good, because I want to know about the first way to my Piyuta, and the second half to my Hanukkah. Yes. So here is a later Piyyut. It's still early. I wrote Yotzer Klassi. It's from the classical period, which we say is the 6th, it is and 7th century. What important, so if we say from the beginning of the 6th to the end of the 7th century, what important event happens during that period which changes the world?
Khalid.
Well, he's a person. What event happens during that time?
Which century?
Between 500 and 700?
Islam.
So the Romans controlled, it was the Romans and the Persians controlled the world. Certainly where Jews lived would have been nearly 100% of Jews would have lived either under the Persians, Talmud Bavli and everybody to the east, or under the Romans. Okay, scholars call them Byzantine. They didn't call themselves Byzantine. They called them Romans. Because they were Christian now. They didn't think they were different from the earlier Romans. Malchus Edom. In the middle of that time, in the 630s, Islam comes, and it's not simply that it takes over an empire. It takes over two empires. They were 1.5 empires. It takes over. The Persians are over. And the Romans are split now, because half of what was Roman is now Islam. Eretz Israel and Europe are not under the same regime for the first time in hundreds of years. And therefore, the Piyuttim that we have in Ashkenaz and in Italy, and to some extent in what they call Machzor Romania, that's not like Yash and Falticen. Romania means the Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, effectively what we call the Greek-speaking, the Byzantine, and then post-Byzantine till, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey, what's that? All those Southeast Europe. The Piyuttim that we have from Eretz Yisrael, if they're not going to be that pre-classical, but as I said, there's very little pre-classical left, because even in Eretz Yisrael, they weren't interested in that anymore much once we have a little. The Yossi ben Yossi, the Rosh Hashanah, Musaf, some very beautiful material, but it's very little. Mostly is going to be from this period, and then it's going to end. Because once Eretz Yisrael and Europe are not under the same regime, the flow of texts stops. Does that mean nobody ever comes with a book that has a medrash or something and takes it over? Of course not. But the constant flow of information, of text, it's Jacques Pirenne wrote a book called Mohammed and Charlemagne. He said, what do they have to do with each other?
What is the word Charlemagne?
Charlemagne that was the king of the Franks in the 9th century, 8th, 9th. So he says, what does it have to do with each other? So the book is only about 200 pages, and for the first 120, he doesn't mention either Mohammed or Charlemagne. I know when I was reading it, I said, where is this going to get to? The first part is all about how he says the Mediterranean Sea was the Lacus Romanus. It was the Roman lake. They trade. You have olives coming from Syria to France. You have trade. From Italy to Africa. Everything's moving. The Muslims come in, and they break that connection. Suddenly, what was all Roman is now split, and there's constant. You've got raiders raiding Sicily and all things going on, and the Muslims got famously into Spain. They got into France too. They weren't there very long, and Charlemagne ultimately, in response to that, is why he gets himself crowned emperor, and he gets himself crowned Western emperor, because he can no longer depend on the Eastern emperors in Constantinople and Istanbul, but because everything's being broken up by Islam. So that's the point of that book, and it really tells. We said, why do we have so much? How many Piyuttim do we have from Elazar Rabbi Kildare in Ashkenaz? Lots, for every holiday we have. How many do we have from Reb Sadia Gaon? 2? 1? I'm saying we have something on so Gedalia. The what would you say it? The channel between them. The flow gets the peleg.
Why do we start with Kaler, and what was let's say Yaini ben Yaini?
Yossi ben Yossi. So he's pre-classical.
They're called pre-classical, even though
Yossi ben Yossi is pre-classical. Yanai is classical. Yanai is already classical.
So Kaler is not in Israel?
He's what?
Yes.
Kilir is not in Israel?
Yeah.
So how do we have it? So how do we have it?
He's before Islam.
Okay.
So it seems that he probably sees 6th to 7th. It seems he probably does see the Muslim conquest at the very end. Kaler.
There's a shit that
What's that?
He's a Tana.
It's the problems with that, yeah. If you look in that very Taismus, and he says he doesn't paskin like the Bavli. He quotes like the Yerushalmi because he was in Eretz Yisrael and he was a Tana.
But
he's a Tana. Why is that? Why is it the Yerushalmi? I didn't have the Yerushalmi either. What's that?
The Guru is on the first day of
they didn't stop at the time of Tanoim keeping one day Yontif in Eretz Yisrael. I've seen them do it. Myself, I saw it.
But
Even in this century.
Rosh Hashanah also.
Rosh Hashanah not
Even in
Rosh Hashanah not see.
But
Not today.
No, but
I've seen
in his time,
In his time, we don't know. In his time, the big machlokes between big machlokes between Ezra Fleischer and Moshe David Herr. I am not going to try to get between them. There is inconclusive evidence because sometimes it was. There were times they kept one. There were times they kept two. There's various things
But
going
is there
on.
like any scholarly approach that he is indeed earlier than the 7th century, like way earlier, or this is just
No.
one of those?
No.
Okay, that's the answer.
What's the problem?
Yeah.
Come on, Toys the feeder data that he has then.
That's
Exactly.
the problem, but like some people.
Right.
We're
still
not smarter,
the
we
same
just
data.
have more information. What's the big thing?
Exactly. I mean, I think it's very strange that there's this. What he means, he says he Paskins like Yerushalmi against the Bavli because he's an Eretz Yisrael great, and then he says and he's a Tana. So if he's a Tana, why is that any more the Yerushalmi than the Bavli? I don't understand. But he's also trying. What he's also doing is he's trying to give authority to these texts because at this point there are people saying you can't say this, you can't say this hefsek, and he says it's not hefsek. He's a Tana.
Maybe
He's
Tosis
the-
means to say it like it says Tuna Tana Kama Rav Shaishas.
But you're saying
a
that-
lot of Mishnayos.
But then it says Rav Lozer Rishivon, so I'm saying it's
I'm trying.
it's good. It's a good teretz. It's a good.
Like the Vilna comes up down.
We can say like the reason that he was a good
No,
guy.
Efshir like the Rashba. You know the story, yeah? They say he was like the Ramban. No, Efshir like the Rashba, but it's
Okay.
which nobody actually said. But
Oh,
it's a true. Maybe he didn't. No, it's somebody wrote.
You're right, that he's like a Tana, no?
But the thing about the Rashba.
Like a Rashba.
If you found the actual source of it, please give it to me because people have written about. They say they looked for it and they never found it. So
Question is who's not
if it's there, if it's there, then you're proving wrong. All the people who say there's no market for it. As you said, Tyson is working for the data they have. You're working for the data you have. If you found it in the Zakdama, then they're wrong. Then they're wrong.
Then I'm
And then-
like Moshe Rabbeinu.
I'm saying it. If you found the source for that, I'm saying great. Okay.
But I want to say.
This Piyyut, though. So this Piyyut
Never.
is you find it in Machzor Romania. The Romaniot Machzor was there's some manuscripts and it was printed in 16th century and then it died. I mean, it became all, I want to say it all becomes Sfardified, but also Ashkenazified. Adi Yamazah, there's an Ashkenazi shul in Istanbul. There was a great chazan, Gershom Shaposhnik, of the Ashkenazi shul of Istanbul in the 1960s. But Romania, there's nothing left. So you find this in manuscripts of Apulia, southern Italy, which again had been Byzantine, it all connection to that southeast Europe, Romania and Candia. Candia is the island of Crete. Who wrote this Piyyut? Well, already you have to be a little suspicious when you're dealing with something that's you find in the Karaganisa. It seems to be from Eretz Yisrael in structure. It seems to be from this old period, and you find it in Europe, not our Europe, but Europe at all. The bells start to go off that might this be Kilerian? So I found it's not signed, but I found in one manuscript in the Geniza that there was a variant version at the very end where it had a silically Eitzer, an extra bit so that it doesn't go immediately into Kaddish, but there's like an extra little bit at the end, and it was signed. It was signed, not full. It was signed Lamed Ayin Zayin Reish Loser. So he's not the only person ever who had that name. But it's signed Loser, and we know he often signed without the Aleph. And it's in the Geniza and it's in Europe. I say Efshar. It could be. What's it about? So first of all, you'll see already he doesn't have that or in the first one. They're getting a little more makil at this point. Because they want to have the themes they want. As you say, is it coming from poetry? The poets, they want to be able to speak.
Freedom.
They want to be able to, which is a problem because you're in the bracha. Remember, this is
poetic license.
It's poetic license, but you're in the bracha.
Yes.
You call it poetic license. Somebody who doesn't like it calls it hefsek. Good. He has these refrains that each end in Kaddish, and as we said at the end, there's going to be, at least in some versions, silukliyat, so it's going to lead directly into that Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. What's he writing about? Ayin, that's Kadosh Baruch Hu. Tzach v'ayin, Bereshis. From the beginning of time, Kilel Ma'aseh Bereshis, he finished L'shon Vayichulu, creation. Olam Hashis, to establish the world. Shisha Yom Kilel Olamim, V'nach B'yom Miyamim. I think that stands, if anybody needs any difficulty, I didn't find anything difficulty there. Yom Miyamim is an interesting, you find, Ma Yom Miyamayim, what's this day? So here it's Shabbos, it's like the day that's the special out of the days. Okay. Gomar Shilumoy Ba'aretz. What does Aretz mean? With an ayin, it means Shemayim. It's a Paitanic word. Why it means that? You'll look in Machzor Mefarash, it'll say it's a Shemayim HaNe'erotzim. The dignified, the praised heavens. I really don't know. It is Bilshon Naritzach, but why they call heaven that? I don't know, but it enables real clever, because you can rhyme Eretz, 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 you're having Eretz. We don't even know if he pronounced ayin. If he didn't pronounce ayin, then they were no. But he must have, otherwise the hearer, because they're not looking at it. He must have, because otherwise they'd be totally confused with, let's put it this way, he must have pronounced it in that word at least. It's like, the people who, the only time you ever hear them pronounce an ayin is when they read the Gemara. Man ditane eidehen lo mishtabash, man ditane eidehen lo mishtabash. It's the only time you ever hear them pronounce, because it needs to make sense. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Okay, good. Like ein peretz ve'en yotzes. There's no breach. He made the world stand. He completed his completion in the heavens. He made it all stand. V'yichulu hashamayim va'aretz. And then you've got these Kaddish stanzas.
Meanwhile, it's Shabbos and doesn't even mention. We know that Shabbos doesn't mention anything about Yotzei HaMoros. Meanwhile, anything about the Yotzei.
Correct. But you know why he's not going to technically need to?
Why?
Because on Shabbos, you're not going to go to the end of the bracha there. You're going to end with Kedusha, and then you're still going to end, at the end, you're still going to have to talk about the virus. In the weekday, you would really have to, because that's all you've got.
He's relying on the end.
What's that?
He's relying on the end.
He's relying on the end. It's one.
The end there.
Kudesh.
He's going to get to, not here. I'm saying it's off the page. I wrote the chule. He's going to finish, and then he's going to have a bit there.
Where is this being placed? Where in the?
Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam v'yatzaru. Good. Chanukah Rishona. What was the first Chanukah? The first dedication? V'chulu hashamayim v'aretz. He l'shoshana. Shoshana is Klal Yisrael. Ani Shoshana Menachayim. The previous. The previous. The priest. You know that's the next one. The previous. V'hiteinu b'reizim. Ani chamatzalas hashorayin. Shoshana. Yeah, there. Okay. But again, in epithet. Okay. Shvi'is yamaher l'mash'ena. May he hasten the seventh Chanukah to be a support. Kadosh, the Holy One. So, this theme, this trope, as they say in literary studies, of the seven Chanukahs appears in Midrashim, it appears in the Psikta Rabasi. It's the theme of a number of Piyuttim. First Chanukah, and there's debate about exactly which one is. The first one, the Chanukah Shemayim V'aretz. Then you've got the Mishkan. See here? Yeah. And the next one, Vahibi on Kalais Moshe. The next one, David HaMelech with the setting up, buying the land for the for the Mikdash. Shlomo HaMelech with the Mikdash. Then you've got the Chanukah at the time of Ezra, the Chanukah of the Bnei Chashmonai, and the seventh one, La'asi Lava. Why? Why do you write about this? Why not write about the Ma'aseh of Chanukah? And the answer is, what Ma'aseh of Chanukah? We know all these stories. We have them. We come later in Eretz Yisrael at this time and Bavel. It seems they know nothing. In the Talmud Bavli, you've got the one thing, the story that there's Pachashemen in the Brisa, Vered Noam has written about this. What's that? Right, but it's different. It's different in Megillas Tainus and how it's been changed and how it's there. Yeah. In the Eretz Yisrael, they really have Kodesh. It's mentioned that there were Beis Chashmonai and that here's what they knew.
Well, they had Chanukah candles.
Yes, that is true. That's a halacha. That's not a story.
Mishnah.
But they didn't have a story.
The story is this.
Please let
During the
profe-
time of Bias Sheni.
I want to add something.
Yeah.
Please don't talk in. It bothers, and I really want the professor to be able to say. He's just trying to say, "What's Hanukkah?" Let him finish, and we have a question. We'll ask. Okay.
Okay. So here's what they did know. In Babel Yoval Nisim, which is really very, very skeleton of a story. I know if you go up to 50 people and you ask them, is Nesbach Hashem and mention Al Nisim, and you don't say it and don't go through and think. They'll say, yes. No, it's not. It's not. In the Talmud, not in Talmud Yerushalmi, in the Nusach Eretz Yisrael, their equivalent of it, which you find in Masach Sofrim and you find in a number of manuscripts in the Geniza, their Me'en HaMa'ira is even shorter. Here, rather than relying on my memory on something I've not looked at in about 10 years. Let me see, I think I have it right at the beginning. This was my dissertation. This is part of my dissertation. This is the English part. This is Uchnisef la'echa. Uchnisef la'echa. U'shrosh kayanecha. Asher asisa b'mei matis yor matasya ben Yochanan kohen gadol chashmuna yovanov. Kshem she'asisa imahem pelav nisim u'gvurais v'noideh l'shimcha gadol sela. There were nisim at the time of somebody named Matisya ben Yochanan kohen gadol chashmunai, and he had some sons. It's amazing that they have the name right, given that they know nothing, and yet Matisya's father's name is Yochanan, and he has this other name Chashmunai, and the name was preserved. There's nothing there. They do know it has something to do with Greeks and Bias Sheni, but that's about it. There's not enough material for a story. There's not enough material to write about. So instead, you have these midrashim about the 7 Chanukahs. It fits in. Chanukah for them was as much about the Nisim as it was about Beis Chashmonai. For us, it's about Beis Chashmonai, and okay, in the morning you hear about the Nisim for 1 minute. On the last day for 20 minutes. But it fits into this. What's that? It fits in this theme, the Nisim, and it's not just the Nisim. It's not just the Nisim are the 2nd Chanukah and the Bnei Chashmonai the 6th. There are also a bunch of others in between. The Mikdash. That's what we're celebrating.
You're saying that actually candle lighting was also for all the Hanukkahs? It wasn't.
I don't think they knew what it was. I don't think they knew. They knew that we light candles. That's the way we celebrate this holiday.
We celebrate what? All the Hanukkahs?
Hanukkah dedication.
No, I'm saying dedication of the Hanukkah of B'mei Chashmonai, or
Yeah.
you're saying that what the candle celebration is for all the Hanukkahs? Like
We don't know. I don't know what they knew. I don't know what they knew. We know.
You don't know. You don't.
I don't know what
they
they
knew something.
They did, but I don't. I'm saying I don't know what they.
moment in time.
I
because
don't.
Prior times we studied there with another scholars who
Yeah.
pointed out that Hanukkah time is the time when they had a lot of access to oil and then they celebrated the olive
Okay.
season. So
You don't need cheshbonaim for that.
I
I'm saying
know,
if you
but
say this is how
small
if we're gonna celebrate all the dedications and you say there's access to oil, it makes sense. But another thing too. Another thing. When do we see lots and lots of lighting of lamps? Not just Zamanayra, which is every day. When do we see that? When do we see that in the Mikdash? When do we see lots of lighting of lamps in the Mikdash? Fifth paragraph, right? Exactly. Which is so. What's his name? Who wrote about Sukkot? What's his name? Genak Nagain. Yaakov Gan Nagain. Has he ever spoken for you?
No.
He should. He's He argues, and he's not the first. People have argued this before. That Simchas Beis HaShoeva itself is a reenactment of the Chanukah of the Mikdash each year. The Mefaz, David HaMelech's Mefaz is a Mecharker, and then Rabbi Shimon Gamliel he's juggling Mefaz is the same kind of and Kida, and he would do Kid. It's celebrating that. Incidentally, Simchas Torah for us is I don't want to say it's the same. It's affected. I think it's influenced by that. So the idea of lighting lamps for Hanukkah to celebrate all the Hanukkahs could be. It could be that it's specifically for Chashmana. After all, the thing you say Me'ena Ma'ira in Haida'a is
Only that, yeah.
it is only that. But to what extent they felt that the holiday as a whole, the Hallel and everything celebrated all these, we can't know. We know that they wrote about them. Good.
But as he asked the question, he said,
What was the question?
There was already Sefer HaMakkabim, Sefer Chashmonaim. How could you say?
We'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Now,
in Greek, right?
what's that?
They only had in the Greek.
Right. Yes. Yes. So now we're up to my Hanukkah. We finished that Piyyut, which shows you a Hanukkah without a story. That Piyyut is our transition from Piyyut.
What a specifics,
to
a
Hanukkah.
story of Chanukah Samigdash. It's a very big story.
It's a story of stories, meaning it's a list. It's not each item in the list is a story, but it's given one. It's given how many words? One little one kata. Correct. No, of course each of those is a story, but the idea of 7 Chanukas is not a story.
Right.
It's a list.
It's obvious that if the Kalir, what you call it, killer, if he would know about the Parashemen, he would write it. That's like
good. So you can't just say, "Oh, he had it." He started, and you see in what's it called? He has a krovat yudchet they call it, with the like what we have on Purim, except it's expanded because they have Kedusha and Chanukah, and he tries to put some details, but it's so some line from some thing in Bracious Rabbi Kiswell Karen Ashur. There's no coherence. So if he had, you see, even when he wants to write it, he doesn't have.
That's why they say that this brides in the Gemara and it's called, and the Chacham call it a Babylonian bride.
Correct.
Yeah?
That's Bavel. And that's Bavel. Okay. And that's in Bavel. What do they have in Eretz Yisrael? So the answer is not much, right? They have the name Matisyo ben Yochanan Koinal Gadol Chashmonai, which is amazing. You'd think that when they have nothing, that they'd remember so specifically the name, but some things get.
I don't know why you call it nothing. I'm saying I don't know why you call this nothing. It's a very big thing. We know that the Beis Hamikdash was not active and was again a Chanukah Samigdash.
Yeah.
What's not? It's very big about it.
There's not enough to write a story about.
I have to write a story. I'm saying you say you have nothing. It's a very big thing.
Okay,
it's a very big thing.
Compared to what we have, compared to what
I'm saying the day is a very big day.
It is a big day.
You don't need a Pach Hashem. It's a big pella.
Forget Pach Hashem, and you leave Pach Hashem aside. That's Babylonian.
I'm saying you don't need the Pach Hashem to celebrate.
I said forget. I said forget Pach Hashem. I said, look, as we said, you say the books of the 1 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees and all these stories about the names of his sons and how Matisyo starts the revolt and then his sons and then fighting and this and that. Nothing. Now let's talk about sources.
And we know in Babel they really like fire, so Yom Tov of fire is a big thing.
True, but they also don't have these. They also don't have 1 Maccabee. They don't have 2 Maccabees. They don't have Josephus. They don't have.
Saying like the story of Hashem is a Babylonian bride. So
good. So let's leave it aside because we're in Eretz Yisrael here. When we talk about Babel, chapter 1 of my dissertation was introducing the corpus of Piyuttim, the text and whatnot, and that was also chapter 1 of Asher. Chapter 2. What text do we have about Hanukkah? So. Narrative source. There's a book which we call 1 Maccabees. Doesn't that sound like a Jewish name, 1 Maccabees? It's not. Jews didn't preserve this. Jews wrote it. The book was written in Lashon Kodesh. It's one of the... One was, yes. We don't have it. It's one of the only historical text for, I guess, could say for Ezra, and then this book 1 Maccabees. And this doesn't mean nobody wrote history at the time. It certainly didn't survive, and they didn't. The whole issue you have with the missing 200 years and how long did this last, and they weren't keeping chronology. They weren't keeping. They knew that there were Persians, and then there were Greeks, and then there weren't Greeks, and then there were Romans. And that's how long this was, what was going on, names of specific kings. They didn't have, except this one book was written. It's very sympathetic to the ruling family of the Bnei Chashmonai. Probably written by somebody as propaganda would make sense. If we don't write history and suddenly we do, and it's very sympathetic, we want to show how we did an amazing thing. We did the impossible. They tried to extinguish Torah. They tried to extinguish the continuity of Yiddishkeit, and to get rid of the Avodah and everything. We got it back. And face it, it was amazing. It was wonderful. Whatever else you want to say about them, this was amazing. That they write a book about it is not so surprising. How do we know it was written in Hebrew? So it's very dangerous to say when you're dealing with stylistic things that, oh, this Greek seems to be a mirror of some expression in Hebrew, because you could also write, people write Bible English. They're writing fake, and it was in the days of so you imitate that. Other books here's how you're sure. There's one place where it talks about the tax collector. And in context, it's absolutely clear it can't be the tax collector. It is the governor over the Mysians, who is some people. Sar HaMisim. Somebody mistranslated something. There's no way this could have happened if the book was written in Greek. Because it's also the church fathers, Origen and Jerome, they say it was in Hebrew, but you don't know if you trust them. This is yes, it's almost like it's a gift. It's almost like the translator, in making the mistake, gave us the gift that we see it's right.
This is kept by who? By the church or by the Ethiopian church? Which church?
So in the beginning, it's all the churches. It's and really for many centuries, it's all the churches. It's only in the Renaissance, time of Renaissance, Reformation, Luther says, well, if they're not in the Hebrew, I don't know if I want to keep them. I don't want to. It's the Pope. It's the Pope. But and even I think he translates it and puts it in the back. They invent the concept. Protestants invent the concept of the Apocrypha. We talk about the Apocrypha. So for Jews, it's not the Apocrypha, but Jews, books we don't have. For Catholics, it's not. It's chazzanut, but everything's chazzanut. Everything we know. For it's not a collection of whatever 11 separate chazzanut. The chazzanut is everything. For Catholics, it's not the Apocrypha. It's just part of the Bible. It's the Protestants when they're trying to reform that, and they say we're not going to use the books that aren't in the Hebrew. Good. What's the title? So Origen and Jerome, certainly Origen. I don't remember. I think Jerome quotes this. Say that the book existed in Hebrew and it was called Sarbeth Sarbaneel. So this is obviously corrupted Hebrew. This could be Sefer Beis Sarbonei Kel, the refusers, the ones that and that would fit with the name of the Mishmers Yehoyariv. Maybe. We don't see. Was this the original name? Was he even right? Did he see it in Hebrew, or did he simply hear that somebody had it in Hebrew? It's rumors, but this is the best we have. Who calls it one Maccabees? First of all, calling them all Maccabees. So probably they say people say Maccabees, Maccabim. That's not. Each of the sons of Mattisyahu has a nickname. Simon, who's called Tassi. Judah, who's called Maccabios. They each got Elazar, who's called Savran. They these weird names that we don't. Yochanan, who's called Gadi.
This is Greek.
We don't even know. We don't know. They don't mean anything in either Hebrew or Greek. They're very, very strange. Yehuda has this nickname Machbai. What kind of name is that? There's a name Machbanai in Divrei Yomim. Could it be a shortened Kitzur Shem for Machbanai? I think that's the most likely, but we don't know. So calling the church, you see, I think in the 4th, the 5th, at some point, and it's quite late even in terms of Christians, referring to all the brothers and maybe even all the fighters in the books and even the martyrs, the Isha Biladeha, calling them holy Maccabees. It's like taking his name and applying it to the whole thing. And therefore they call the book. So we have various books that talk about this. This is one of the books. They didn't have a name for it. We'll see later there are other books. So they called this one Maccabees. One book that talks about Maccabee or Maccabees.
Is the word Chashmonai mentioned in those books?
No, it's in Josephus, and it's of course in the Gemara. 2 Maccabees is a book that was written in Greek. The beginning, it says there's an introduction to it. It says that originally it was a 5-volume history by someone named Jason of Cyrene, a Yid, but a Hellenized, and I don't mean that in the sense of
Yasin, the real Hellenized name.
Yeah, but I don't mean that in the sense of not observant, not anything. Clearly, it's a very religious book, but he's a Hellenized Jew. He's got a Hellenized name. He's writing in Greek. Maybe he's living in Egypt. Where they he wrote a 5-volume history.
We know that they knew about Hanukkah.
The book is
Philo talks about Hanukkah.
Josephus in Eretz Yisrael, but does Philo talk about Hanukkah?
He said that stone in Alexandria in Egypt.
Yeah. Well, these books definitely eventually made it to Alexandria because the Christians get the Bible of the Christians, aside from of course the Avoin Gilayan as the Evangelion, their Old Testament is the Bible of the Jews of Alexandria. That's why it has extra books. Right. Bible. It's the library of. I don't want to say that in Alexandria they said this was Kisvei HaKadosh. We don't know how they did. Right. This was their life. It definitely made it to Alexandria. So was he there? Well, Cyrene. I don't know where Cyrene is. I don't think it's in Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't sound like it. So. There's some, at the beginning, there are 2 letters. One's about Nehemiah and this strange story about the fire in the Mizbeach when they first get and then the other, right, and hide it, and he found it afterwards. And then there's another letter which says that you all should keep Hanukkah. Everybody, the Jews, everyone should keep Hanukkah. And then he says, and now I'm going to get into the history. So unlike the first book, which in an alternate history, if the world had been different, could have been. Chazal could have kept it. They didn't. They never cited. They don't have it. Could they have it? I mean, it's a book in Hebrew. That this is a book in Greek. It's very religious. It praises the martyrs. It's all about passive martyrdom. It's not so thrilled about the family. Yehuda himself, okay, but it has lots of miracle stories. But it's not I don't want to say it's not a Jewish book. He's not Unzera. He's some other kind of Jew. And that community, he's not a Christian. There were no Christians at the time. But the book is not a Christian book. But afterwards, what happens to the community of Alexandria? They're not us. This is important. They're not us. They used Greek in their shuls. They used...
Why do you say they're not us? Because we don't have too much connection, but how do you know they're not us? We don't know.
What do you mean they're not? Did we start? We started to say they ultimately come from Eretz Yisrael. But
I'm saying we don't have too much connection. We're
not their descendants.
Well, I understand. I'm saying they're not. We didn't make a tiling with them. We didn't.
No, it's not like the Samaritans. That's not what.
That's Samaritans. That's Curates.
So, I mean, we don't.
They had some contact. You know what Philo says. But meeting
we have Gornish Kagan say, but they're not Unzra. They're not. We're
not continuing their Messiah.
Their Messiah ended, except what Goyim, what Christians continued of them.
Right.
That their Messiah was over. So many were killed. So they're definitely not us because many were killed. Many became Christians. And the remainder became us, but then gave up what. That's what I mean by they're not. I'm saying that
tradition finished.
By the time you get to Synagogue in Egypt, they're just normal Jews. I'm saying
that doesn't answer the first book. The first book wasn't Lashon Kodesh.
And that could be chance.
Why didn't the Chazal know anything about that? I'm saying you're explaining the second book. But
I don't know. I said in an alternate history, Chazal could have had the first book,
and
they didn't. Lots of things could have been and didn't. I'm pointing out the difference in these two books.
How many generations did it take for the Chashmonaim to become completely Tzedokim?
Secular.
And even then, you want to say completely because there's even within the family there's all sorts of fighting and there's all sorts of 70, 80 years? No more. Yeah, something more. It's a couple generations. The whole generation, the whole thing.
Because that's why the Chumim had a break.
Maybe
they were all Tzedokim,
and then they were all gone. Right? They're all there. It's not too long after that they're all they're all killed off. So I'm saying it's.
I'm seeing some Sofer says that the reason why it's not mentioned in the Mishnah is
it is mentioned in the Mishnah.
Okay, it's almost not mentioned in the Mishnah.
Okay.
is because there was an agenda of I'm seeing this here. This could be of Rabbani Akudish.
A lot of people like this. My friend Eli, my friend Eli Duker, who also an interesting fellow. He's been working on Haftaros on the where the Haftaros come from, and for each parsha he goes through. He says he really doesn't like it when people say this, because he says you're dealing with a holiday that has one mitzvah, two mitzvahs, the Neros and Halal. They're both the Rabbanan, and nonetheless, it says that the shluchim go for Kislev. So he says, why is he says, it can't be that they're trying to actively erase it. He says, what's happening is, why is there no Masechta? Because there's nothing to say.
Like the Ram says stuff on Tefillin.
There's nothing to say.
Something so posh that everyone knows already.
Yeah. Well, Tefillin, there's lots of dinim. This doesn't even have lots of dinim. This is even. I'm saying this is even more than that.
Yes,
this is even with tzitzis. You can still ask that. You could say maybe it's posh, but there's so much to say.
Right.
Here, Ner Chanukah Yishavesei. Tzmanya Yomi.
But donuts and everything.
Okay. So that's why we're the Gemara. The donuts don't come till the donuts is Tachan the Amarayim. So it's the Tanaim didn't have that, so you didn't have to talk about it. Yeah.
They wanted to have a Voice Shebelev, they wanted to have the heartburn. So the
Amarayim, yeah. It's
the donuts.
So I hear that. I know that this is a popular thing to say. I don't want to say it's wrong, because could be, but there are kashas against it. You see, that it is mentioned in the Mishnah, and it didn't need to be. Why couldn't they just not mention in Megillah that in Chanukah we read the Nesiah? We could say Tana B'Shayar. We don't want to talk about that. But first book could have survived, didn't. Whether you want to say that this is an intentional maybe, or whether you want to say we forget just how much is lost with Churban Abayis. Look how much was lost with Churban Europa. Imagine that in a world without printing, without lots of books, where everything's oral. Okay, this book wasn't oral, but so much is the chaos that's coming from that. Maybe it wasn't actively destroyed. Maybe we don't have. Maybe they did want it to be forgotten.
We'll still find it. We'll find the Zohar.
We'll find lots of things, or we won't.
Well, they found the Hebrew version of Ben Sira lately.
That's true. But we know Chazal had that. They quote it. They don't quote this. They don't saying finding something that you know we had isn't so surprising. Right. Finding something that you know we thought we didn't have, that's a chiddush. Another book. So because they have these two books, what do the Christians call them? One Maccabees, two Maccabees. This is not like Malachim Aleph, Malachim Beis. It's not like Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel Beis. This is two different books that are called this. Good. There's a book called Judith. What is Yehudis? What is this Judith? It's a narrative work. It's a story. Probably fictional, imaginative. Never talks about Greeks. Certainly never talks about Bnei Hashmonai. It's set in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, who reigned over Ashur. What? Nebuchadnezzar's father. Is it saying? I think it may already. It's a little hint at the beginning. Know that this is a book of fiction. This is not exactly. And also, you see from a speech that's given in where they talk about Bayis Sheni. It's talking in Bayis Sheni times. Now, my friend Avram Levine has said that could be that Melech Ashur means Melech Paras, because in Ezra and Nehemiah you have Melech Paras is called Melech Ashur in one place and Melech Bavel because he took over these. So it could be, but even if so, you're clearly using language that's not exactly gleich, right? Okay. What language was the book written in? Unfortunately, there are no special surprises like the Misim thing there. We don't. We have it in Greek. Was it written in Hebrew? We don't know. We really don't know. Could have been. It's definitely Jewish. What's the story? Summary is as follows. Nebuchadnezzar's leading the Assyrian army. He defeats Arpachshad, king of Madai. Again, not known to history that there was an Arpachshad king of Madai. Great name, obviously taken from Seder Bereshis. Obviously is taken from there. No, could it be a stand-in that it's using for some? I mean, maybe. What? Is it a real story? Okay, doesn't seem to be, but I don't want to say what I don't know. Yeah, good. He sends his general Holofernes to go westward to punish all the nations that didn't help his
I'm taking a
campaign.
Greek name.
This is the Greek form of it. What's the original form? What kind of name is this? No, I'm not going to write.
Now you're going to Greek.
Greek name, but I'm saying.
Okay.
So he sends them, and he goes to the battles in the east. He goes to the west. He says, "I'm going to punish all the nations that didn't give me money to support my campaign." They all surrender except the Jews. The Jews are scared he's going to destroy the Mikdash. I don't know why that's a reason not to surrender. I think if you surrender, maybe they'd be less likely to destroy Kasha from Isa. What? You always have to figure out. What do you say?
Maybe they're going to win.
Who knows exactly? Who? Okay. Not trying to get into their heads, especially if they didn't exist, right? I don't know. Maybe then I have more right to, because if it's literature, I have as much right as the author to. So they're praying, they're fasting. It's very hard. They're really worried. Holofernes asks his yayatzim. He asks them, "Give me information. I want to know about the Jews. What's their deal?" So he has one advisor, Achior. What kind of name is that? Who knows? What's that?
Like a Harry Potter.
Achior. It does sound almost like a Harry Potter name. Achior.
Achior is a Hebrew name.
What do you think? My brother is light? Achior? I mean,
Is a Hebrew name. It's not.
Is it Hebrew name?
Greek. It's not Greek.
Could be.
It doesn't sound. The etymology sounds.
If you say that the etymology is Achior, I'm saying if it's
okay.
it's not a name we know from anywhere. Good.
Achimot, we see.
Achimot is Hebrew name.
We see using ach. It's not such a okay.
Are you sure it's a ches? Maybe it's a chav. I'm saying. Well, what we don't have it in Hebrew, right?
It's with Achav, you know.
That's what I'm saying. The word achi with not
Could be,
is now a thing. You know?
Okay. Okay. Well, he's not Jewish at this point. He's Megayer later. But
He's not Jewish.
well, he's not Jewish. No, he's one of the advisors of Holofernes.
Okay.
So, but he knows about the Jews. He's like Zeresh. But he says, he tells the whole story. He says, this people, they started, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they went into Mitzrayim, they got the first temple, they're exiled, the second temple, and here we are at second temple, and whenever they sin, they fail. And whenever they don't sin, they succeed. So, Holofernes doesn't like this answer. He ties him to a tree right outside the city of Bethulia. What is this? Besula? What kind of strange name? Okay, could be multiple things because we only have it in Greek, and then in translations from Greek. So ties him to a tree, and he says, "When I come back and I destroy the city, first one I'm going to kill is you, and then I'm going to go kill all of them." So the residents of the city, while fasting and praying, they find a man tied to a tree outside. They bring him into their city as their friend, because he's gotten punished by the enemy of my enemy, right? He comes in. Holofernes lays siege, cuts off the water sources.
If you don't kill him.
What's that? So Uzziah, the mayor, he says to Holofernes, he says, "Give us 5 days to pray. If God doesn't rescue us in 5 days, we surrender." Sounds like a son of Tegef, right?
The story.
Not the Piyyut, but the Meister of Amnon. Incidentally, the way that story is written in the Or Zarua is beautiful, with all these biblical allusions. That it's the prose is almost like, it's not poetry, but it's really beautiful prose. And today everybody reads it in rewritten. I made a machzer for my minyan for Rosh Hashanah this year. I retranslated everything, and I put in the Maisa from how it is in the Or Zarua, and I was just struck by how much more beautiful it is than the way it's usually told. So he says 5 days. If not in 5 days, I'm going to surrender. So then you have Judith. Who is this? There's a young almana in the city, and everybody knows she's very pious, she fasts. So she says to Uziah, don't give them an ultimatum. That's now, al tanasu as Hashem. He says, what should I do? He says, don't worry, it's in my hands. So she prays, there's a number of these prayers, she says. She gets to the tent of Holofernes, famous story. She tells him, I'm a prophet. I come from a family of prophets. We know that when the Jews sin, they're going to get defeated. And right now, she lies to him. She says, right now they're very, very, very sinful. This isn't actually true. They're all praying. They're all fasting. She says they're sinful, and they're going to fall in your hands. He says, that's wonderful, wonderful news. Now sleep with me. So she says, I need a toivelsech first. But I have 3 days I need to, in 3 days I'll be ready. So, but meanwhile, give me permission to go back and forth and pray and go to the Mayan and pray there and come back. And he says, you do whatever you want. This is wonderful. The third day, she comes back. He's so excited. He makes a big feast. He gets drunk. He gets all the men drunk. She cuts off his head. And since she got permission to come in and out, right, to immerse herself and to pray, so the guards let her right out. She has the head in a bag. She comes back. She comes back to her city. The mayor Uziah says,
She has a maid?
What's that?
She has a maid with her?
Yeah, and some of the versions, yeah. Yes. We don't have to have all the details here, but yes, the two of them. She comes back, and the mayor says, what are you doing? Did you embarrassed us, you shamed us, you went into the enemy camp, you did my Avera, you did. And she says, I didn't do any Averas. Look, I have his head. So he says, I don't believe, how do I know that's his head?
Takes from Yael.
Achio, yeah, so how do we know it's the head? Achio recognizes it. So they thank him, he's Megayer, and then, and in the morning, she says that they should all run out of the city as if they're in battle. So the Machne Ashur, they go to their king. They didn't tell him they're attacking us. They tell him, and they see he's headless. So it's all over. It's not very. I think realistically, you kill the king, the war's not over. But this is a video game. You kill the bad guy, and it's over. And it's over. So that's the story. Jerome, when he makes
it's not accurate because there is a very big because they can mamish go into shock seeing that.
It does. It can happen.
Be a video game.
Correct. It can happen. But you also have, what's it called? You had with Al Qaeda. It's that they killed, and then there's another. It's not always.
It's not a militia.
But it's often weakened.
The story is a king. When how did
well,
they get there?
He's not the king.
He's the general, but how did they get there?
Correct.
It's like the beepers.
Fine. Okay.
That's a true story, the beepers.
What's the story of the beepers?
It's not true.
How do you know that? What's the
Hezbollah beepers.
No, the Hezbollah beepers.
What's the story? When? This year? What the
beepers from the Israelis.
No, what happened?
Killed the Hezbollah.
When was this?
Terrorists last year.
What happened? We'll talk afterwards. Yeah, it's the. I want to hear it, but it's the. Yeah. But, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. So this is this book. It's preserved in Greek. Preserved in Greek. Jerome. Who's Jerome? Jerome is one of the church fathers.
Which year?
He is in the 4th and 5th century. So you're talking 300s, 400s. He's a Roman. Christian. And so first thing he does, he wants to revise the Vetus Latina, the old Latin translation of the Bible was straight from Greek. So the first thing he does is he wants to do a retranslation. And he does that.
He doesn't want to rely on the Vulgata. I don't understand what.
There's no Vulgata yet. He creates much of the Vetus Latina is the old Latin translation, which was made by who knows who. Somebody, for people, early Christians who have the Greek and then they're switching to Latin. Like today, you'll find like old English translations of the Siddur by somebody in England in 200 years ago who probably didn't know English or Hebrew very well, and then good. So he wants to revise it. He does Tehillim. He does from the Greek. Then he realizes, if I'm really going to do this, I need to learn Hebrew. This is very impressive. I'm thinking, this is not 20th century German Bible scholars will go to the Bible department. This is, the world of anti-Semitic Christians, or that you would need to go learn Hebrew. So he goes to Eretz Yisrael. He learns Hebrew from a teacher. Not clear if the teacher's a Meshumed or an observant Jew. Certainly somebody who was a Jew, who was learned. There's one in his commentary on Koheles, he gives one drasha which his teacher told him in the name of Rabbi Akiva, which we don't have. It was interesting. I mean, he's dealing with somebody who's really holding. So, what does he notice when he gets to Judith? There is no Judith in Hebrew. So he says he has some Aramaic version. It might be a Syriac. It's not necessarily a Jewish Aramaic version. And he says he spent one night retranslating the book from the Aramaic, but scholars are not sure how much he did from Aramaic, how much he's really just revising from the Old Latin, or how much he's using from Greek. He spent one night doing it. The book is 15 chapters. So I'm saying, what?
Shvut Kalmus, no?
Exactly. One night. I mean, exactly. That's it. And we don't ask questions, right?
No,
I'm saying we don't.
He meant to say that it took him fast.
I don't know. I'm saying
or
I don't know. You're saying when they say it's a Shmos Komos, and we say, oh yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't know.
The Piyuttim one night.
What do you
one
think?
night.
Or
what?
Or
he went all night and he did it. I pulled all-nighters.
I'm saying, what do you think was the options? I'm saying, how long it took him? If it took one night, then it took one night. If not, it's going to get one night. What are you aiming by?
My point is that we don't know how much he really spent using the Aramaic and what. And I'm saying, like, if he's going very quickly, I'm saying he looked at it. It's the.
This is the source in our version of the story of the Yehidus.
It's good. This is going to go through many Gilgulim. Yes.
We don't have on any other.
No, it's nowhere in Chazal. Nowhere in Midrashim, nothing.
We have in Rashi. Rashi mentions, but
Rashi is much later. All of these sources we're going to read, Rashi has already. Yosipon, Medrash Chanukah. Rashi is 800 years later.
Where's the first when it does show up in sort of conventional literature, like
Medrash Chanukah? Yeah. What is Medrash Chanukah? We're going to get that is the most important thing for this class. So. Later on, though, so in the end of Jerome's version, which is not exactly like the Greek, he's clearly not just translating it. In the end, he says that at the end, on the day when she defeated him, the Jews made a yontif, and they celebrate it to this day. That's part of the story. It's not in the Greek. He doesn't say it's Hanukkah. There's no connection to Greeks. So it was preserved by Christians, and at some point in the Middle Ages, probably around the 9th, 10th century, when you have Jews interested in Sfarim Chitzanim, which are, we call them Sfarim Chitzanim, but for them they're really Chitzanim. How do you get them? You have to go to Christians to find them. And you have to have somebody who knows Greek or Latin to be able to translate them. The first version is this Maisa Shtei Hanashim, which is part of the Medrash Chanukah literature. We have here. There are all sorts of other versions, including some that are much more literally translated from the Latin and whatnot. We don't need to deal with them. They're later. The important one is this Medrash Chanukah. Okay. What's Yosipon? So at the same period, we're talking 9th, 10th century, after centuries where they don't have any Bayis Sheni literature. The Jews are interested. Somehow they discover, hey, the Christians have stuff that was us. I spoke about this and I said, you know what? It's just like this. Yehuda starts among the Jews. She goes into the enemy camp. She spends time there, and then she comes back and brings the head back. The book itself is like that too, right? It was originally a Jewish book. It went out. It spent 1,000 years in the enemy camp, and then somebody went in and brought the head back.
Story of Purim is the same thing. Esther went in there and brought back Haman.
How does that work? You're saying?
Esther went and married a guy to bring back Haman. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not so stark if it's 3 days and she comes in and it's all
It's the same structure.
the same structure. Correct. That's somebody who's going into the animal. She also stays there after. I mean, it's not. I'm saying. Okay.
It's certainly written based on the
That's the detail about cutting the head down. I mean, the whole story as a whole is that detail. Absolutely. Good. What's Yosipon? So same time, you have a Jew in southern Italy who is he's familiar with the Latin version of Josephus. Josephus wrote in Greek. It's not just Josephus he has though. He also has all the books of the Apocrypha. And he has 1 Maccabees, he has 2
What's the meaning of
Maccabees.
the word apocrypha?
Apocrypha means hidden writings.
Hidden writings.
But it's a newer term. It's Protestants invented this term. I think they invented it. Certainly they're the ones who used it. So he makes this Divrei Yemei Bayis Sheni. He makes this book. He doesn't claim that he is Josephus.
Like making a kitzer from the...
He's taking from, so first of all, the problem is he has only the Latin Josephus. Latin Josephus isn't a straight translation of the Greek. Latin Josephus has lots and lots of Christian and even anti-Semitic insertions. It'll say some story or something, and it'll say, well, that's why the Jews deserved the Chorban. And so he has to cut out those. He makes a Jewish book. And it's based, so when he has, you don't need Josephus for this period. Josephus's knowledge of this period comes entirely from 1 Maccabees. He didn't have 2 Maccabees, he just had 1
Now
Maccabees.
his times, it's much later.
So, but he writes about it because he's writing it.
Right.
So, you don't need, he doesn't, so Yosipon doesn't got this from Josephus, he has the source. He has even better. He has 1 and 2 Maccabees. So he makes a whole narrative.
What's his name again?
We don't have a name for him.
We call him Yisifis.
Because we call him
This was an Asher and Ashkenaz that we got.
Right.
Some got Yisifis Plavis, some got Yisifis.
They call it Yosef Ben Gurion.
Yosef Ben Gurion. Yosef HaKoyen Ben Gurion.
So
Yosef Kohen
HaKoyen,
Gurion.
in the original version, he doesn't claim to be, and in fact, he says Vayichov Yosef B'Sifrei. But as you get Yosef on A and B and C, and as it gets more and more, it gets rewritten such that people think it is from antiquity. The fact is, it's an amazing thing. It's the best historical source writing you have in the Middle Ages. Of he went back to the sources and he brings them back.
But the Rishonim took it like literally, like proof from by Shiny. Like.
Yeah, because by the time it was edited to Yosef on version C, they
claimed being
yes, probably innocently. I don't think it's like a ziyaf. I don't think there's a zaifan. I think somebody who's rewriting the sentences to make them nicer says. Add somewhere, and I was because he thinks that's what he thinks, but not intentionally.
Nothing wrong.
No, right? Nothing.
Right?
Nothing wrong.
The
Yeah,
Ramban
it's
is
fine.
skeptical.
What?
The Ramban is skeptical.
Rashan is skeptical.
The Ramban.
That was later, but I'm telling you,
They held by, but they all
they bring it with a very big eye.
Yeah.
They have no problem with that.
Yeah. But also but not just Chachmei Ashkenaz. Also, what's in the Ravid, the historian, and it's
Abu Dawud. Abu Dawud.
Yeah. What the book is called? No, that's later.
Amina Rama.
He did write that, but that's not the history book. Sefer HaKabbalah. Sefer HaKabbalah. Yeah. So you've got that. You've also got a very strange. On the other hand, so Jews want stories. Jews love stories. When they don't have stories, they have to make them up.
Jews, every person, the humans like stories.
Maybe that too, but we're talking about Jews.
Okay.
So when you don't have stories, when you do have stories, when you have access, when you have a Jew who can read Latin, how many Jews could? Amazing that you had a Jew who could read Latin, was interested in writes Yosipon. Good. You also have Jews who don't. So they make things up. That's why we have Megillas Antiochus. What's Megillas Antiochus?
He wrote Megillas Antiochus?
No, Megillas Antiochus was, so scholars date it respectively between the 2nd century, Tanoim, and the 8th.
Okay.
I think it's more like the 8th. The first Jew to ever mention it is Rav Sadia Gaon. And he thinks it's old, which means it's probably 100 years old at his time. Nobody knows of it earlier. The story is very strange, does not match up with anything we have in either 1 Maccabees or 2 Maccabees. We have the name, they know the name Antiochus, Chazal don't. And they know the names of the 5 sons of not this young, but who is important and what not. The most important son is Yochanan. Yehuda is killed very early. Why Yochanan is very unimportant in the books? Probably because they know we talk about Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who's not. That's Shimon's son. It's completely different generation. But we don't mean they know we have. And it says that the name, usually we have Maccabios, we have Machbai always in Hebrew. Here it's Machbai with a kuf, and he says, what is it? He says Yochanan went and he made a pillar, and he made this pillar in memory of this nest, and he called the pillar Machbai. What? It's a very strange. Yehuda is killed in the very first battle, even before his father dies. The whole story is completely, as I said, when you don't have stories, you make up stories. It's also not very interesting. I'm saying, just reading it as a story, it's not very good.
Detailed information on the battlefield.
But very strange. It's like, what?
Do we know today
Detailed
from where the
information on the
sources, where he took, to say which battles did he, like which history books did he have?
I don't think, I almost not.
That he based
You see,
the
he had
story
to
on
have
that?
something, so he had the names.
No, I'm not saying I have to have something from us. Something history about the world, some war.
Oh,
But
you mean
it's
that you
imitating
That's
that.
interesting. I don't know. That's it. That would be interesting. A dissertation on Megillah.
If you don't have this, if you don't have
take
this,
from others. You say what you
can't
take.
say, you can't claim that's for sure not a story event. It's a story.
You say it's not our stories of the
8th century, yeah?
What's that? Probably 8th. Yeah. I'm saying, but it's so different from the sources that are from that time. Yeah. And it's also not well written. You're listening to it. You're just saying this is boring. Yeah. Anyway. In Ashkenaz, they don't use it much. They barely use it. Only Menachem ben Noach uses it. So you could say, they didn't have it, or you could say they recognized that it, A, was modna, B, wasn't very interesting. They had better sources. Good. In the Gemara, of course, you've got Nespach Hashemen. You've got a bunch of other stories. So you've got Nitzachu Talaya the Avadu Krava Ba'Antochia. The voice that comes out of the Kodesh Kodashim and says that the children who fought in Antochia, that were victorious, and that which isn't really talking about that period. It's actually like 90 years, 80 years later. But when you don't have much, you say, okay, this is a story from fighting in Bayis Sheni. So
But now you know why it's called Antiochus and that Sefer.
Sure, but
Because they
had a Sefer.
know that the name Antiochus.
It's probably written there. I probably written there or around there. Is probably how they know it. Meaning, they're not getting it from a book. They're getting it from they know the city they live. Anyway, in 2 Maccabees, there's a famous story. Ha'isha v'ladeha. Oh, I knew someone was going to say that.
It doesn't.
It doesn't say in 2 Maccabees she doesn't have a name. In the Gemara she doesn't have a name. In Medrash Eicha I think it's Miriam Bas Nachtom or Miriam Bas Tanchum or something like that. In the Piyuttim she's got various different names. Chana is a name that appears in some Sephardi Piyuttim the Tisha B'Av, and it appears in Yosifon version Gimel. So it's not in the first one, it's not in the second one, it's not in somebody who probably knew those Piyuttim for Tisha B'Av. Why does the name make sense? Again, not historically, but as somebody who they saw this story and they want to give her that name. Who says Ad Akara Yolda Shiva? It's a Medrash Shemus. She has to have a name, and the name of the who prophesied about the 7 sons and it's not a historical name. All this will then come together in, as we'll see. Next time we'll start with the Medrash Chazak texts, which I printed out, and we'll start really reading the Ashkenazi Piyuttim.
Before you sum up.
No, and then you go back. Not before. Now we have questions.
No, not questions. Before you start, I just want to organize it a little bit because some of the people text.
Oh, yeah.
We started with Piyuttim. We ended up with the history of the various Megillas. Like, how did we transition?
Start from Piyyut to say what a Piyyut is.
Right.
Then you went over the sources that we have of Hanukkah. Next
not
week,
connected to the Piyuttim.
No,
Not yet. We've done
Piyyut,
we looked. Yeah.
Then you understand the sources. But
We sort of fell into it from that
didn't
Piyuttim
follow.
Talib.
Well, that was the trick to
My
get between
Piyyut
one
and
and
my
the other.
That was his
Hanukkah.
poetry.
Okay?
I made two separate sections, but in the middle I
It's
showed
gonna come
one.
together to next week with the
Yeah.
poetry of Hanukkah.
I showed
Poetry is
one.
built on the sources that we have, okay? So we need to know what the sources are.
And what's fascinating is, unlike for any other yontif, the sources are going to be Chazal. Sources are going to be Midrashim, Gemaras. Here, there's just not. So here, the sources that they use, all these chitzoni sources that they come from Christians, they come back to Jews, that are going to have to be. That's why Hanukkah is unique and so interesting. You look in Purim, what are the sources going to be? Tanakh, the Megillah, and Midrashim. There's so many Midrashim on that. Pesach too. Everything. Hanukkah is unique. Hanukkah is unique that they're using, that they're taking.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I have time. Yeah.
You want to finish?
Yeah, you can keep recording if you're asking. I'm saying I don't know how you do that.
Did you explain the original Piyyut? Maybe I missed it because was this an abbreviation of the Yetzirahs, or this was a cutting out the original and putting in a new shorter version? I'm not sure if I
So as I said, Yosef Heinemann versus Ezra Fleischer.
This is
Ezra
Rabbi
Fleischer
Gamliel.
says that at the time of Rabbi Gamliel, at least for the brachos of Shema Esrei. We don't know if he'd say this necessarily about the brachos Kriyas Shema, but I think he would. Then he'd say that there was a fixed text, and they said this is the text, this is what we're going to say, and then everything else cut out. They said, "Oh, we want to make it shorter, we want to make it more interesting." Yosef Heinemann says, "No way." He says, how could Rabbi Gamliel have made a text and say everybody? So if it's the second one, then they just, this is how somebody davened one day.
Yeah, but it's a play on our tefillot. It's hard to say that they came up with this play without having the original tefillah in front of them.
You say because L'tzion Tatzmiach?
Yeah.
That's almost all nuschos do not have or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir. If he had that, that would be even more surprising. Most don't have. I don't think he's playing on that. Maybe he is.
We think it was just Birchat Hashem Yitzhak, like we say, like we have the
You can't just say the Chasim, you have to say something beforehand.
No, you can say, when let's say, then we can have a Piyyut.
You can, yeah, you have a Piyyut.
You're saying basically the brachos.
Meaning you can't just say, you can't, you can't
Thinking brachos means that actually the
Chasim, it's the
Chasim, and also maybe some inside about that. But they can for sure expand more on the meaning of that specific day. It has connection with our.
And also maybe with what's going on in the world also. I'm saying it's,
Yes.
I also want to go back to that part. Two questions. If you go by that, when the Gemara says Ashlich Tzibur Velusa Shegura, does that mean in that case that it needs to be a good Piyyut?
I think so.
Not a good Chit Chadim.
I think so. Again, we don't. So much we don't.
And the
I
second
think it means that he
question.
knows it. Also, why do they say that the Shlich Tzibur has to be Boki B'Torah L'Vim Ksuvah? Why?
So he can make that.
So he can make.
And the second point,
There's no center. He's making up.
and the second thing, I think you mentioned that. I just want to make sure. Is it true that there was no Nisachat Tefillah as a song? Because if the focus of a Tefillah is to be a good Piyyut, poet, then he doesn't have to. So that means that sounds like vocals didn't exist.
They have. Who says you can do? Who says you can do both? Who says you can improvise the?
Because it's not meant. Because when they said they talk about the requirements.
Do they talk about Koilei Orev? Does it come up in Tainus? That's only Rishon.
What's it called? What we say before Kaddish.
That's not the first source. That's not. It's macho. No, it's not the Mishnah, but isn't it? But what you do, I'll tell you what you do find. I'll tell you what you do find. Over and over, the killer he's talking about Arbanina, Shira. The verbs he's using were all Shira. The Gina he's using verbs of that.
Read me. How do you say?
The elders. Baruch Atah Hashem. Yetzirah Barechai Shem Chayiseh Shalom Mevorei Esakon Yalad Hashem Vayair Lanu Moir Tzidkecha L'tzion Tatzmiach Baruch Atah Hashem Yetzer Amoyrais.
Tell me that matter. That's it. It's over.